No pun intended, episode 9. We have a special episode today, guys. We are joined by our very first ever podcast guest. Round of applause. Candidate Master Azel Chua is joining us today, and he is kicking off his brand new Chessable course. What's the course about, Azel?
Yeah, the course I just wrote, it just got published, is Introduction to Chess Calculation. It's designed to give your calculation thought process that is suitable for beginners, but it's also smoothly scalable such that you can continue to use it into master level. And my passion for this subject stems from the fact that beginners pick up loads of bad habits and ineffective techniques very easily. And by the time they realize their techniques don't work, it's too late. They need to unlearn everything, which is the tough part, and then restart that journey on the correct path. It's like constructing a poorly built one-story house and then realizing you needed a three-story house, but the foundation doesn't support it. So you got to destroy the whole thing and rebuild.
Yeah, it makes sense. And this is your second course on calculation, but really it's a precursor to your first course because your first course is all about calculation for tournament players. So this maybe comes a little before that. Would you say that's right?
Yeah, and I think I also would do it in this sequence again if I had to start over. And the reason is you find that a lot of in all businesses, people like to the successful people niche down first and then they get broader and broader. So if I were to start in the beginner market straight away, I have way too many competitors. But if I establish myself as someone who could deal with 1,200 to 2,000 rated players very well, and then I can expand into that. And that's why I did the beginner course after doing the intermediate course. But the concept is the same. It's all about technique.
Yeah, Azel's given us solid business advice. Do you have any takeaways from this, Matt?
Yeah, so we should have our courses on Chessable.
Yeah, maybe that's the one.
Sweet. Well, I'll speak a little bit more about the about calculation technique, right? Because I don't want this just to be an advertisement. I want y'all to walk away with something. So I'll talk a bit about how to form your own technique. You don't even, you know what, with this video, with this podcast, I'm going to give so much value. You don't even need to buy my course. I'll teach you how to identify bad techniques and make your own. I'm
Azel
going to
knows
give an
how to
example.
sell. Azel knows how to sell.
I'm going to give you an example of a bad technique, terrible technique, and then explain all the characteristics that make it bad. So what is the most common piece of advice, Matt and Jesse, given to people wanting to solve chess tactics or chess puzzles? What technique is most commonly taught?
Woodpecker technique maybe, or the technique of just like don't move until you're sure of the answer. One of those.
Well, I was going to go for checks, captures, and threats.
That's what I was
Okay.
thinking.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
spot the
Matt.
six spot the 1500 in the group.
No,
Exactly.
you're above us. You're above me.
But yeah, I consider checks, captures, and threats is taught so much. If you search it up on YouTube now, you'd find loads of results, Gotham chess, Anna Kremlin, and so on. And I think it's a really bad technique, frankly. And before I criticize it, we need to understand why it became so popular as a technique. And my hypothesis is that it became commonly taught when chess coaches realized the solutions to most puzzles, especially beginner puzzles, are checks, captures, and threats. You can see the issue with that. That's like saying, since most roses are red, to look for roses, you have to identify red things. And that's a big problem. You're going to be like, oh, is this a rose? Now it's my wire. Hey, is that a rose? Now it's a fire hydrant. And same thing with real chess games, not puzzles, but actual chess games. You will have plenty of opportunities to play useless checks, useless captures, useless threats. And these are what I call false signals, which is a trait of bad techniques. A false signal is when you do what the technique tells you to do, but get no results. And this will inevitably compel you to give up on the technique. If you keep looking for checks, captures, and threats throughout the game, and most of the time you're not getting any results, what's the point of continuing with it? You will give up on it. And not out of laziness, but that's just how the brain works. And that's just the first problem I have with it, the false signals. The second problem with checks, captures, and threats is that the technique is not scalable. As you progress to more advanced puzzles, you will find that the solution is usually defensive or quiet moves. And there's no clue that tells you to stop wasting your time on checks, captures, and threats. The puzzle will look the same As with any other beginner puzzle, you will assume the solution is a check or something. You will execute the technique all the same, even if it's a waste of time, even if it is ineffective. And there isn't even a way to build on the technique. It has to be abandoned altogether. And that's what I said earlier about needing to destroy the one-story house in order to rebuild the three-story. And the last issue, which I talk about a lot in the course, is how checks, captures, and threats presupposes the presence of a tactic. So maybe it works for puzzles, because puzzles, you know there's a tactic. But in a real game, no one's going to pause the clock at move 23 and say, hey, there's a tactic now, start looking for checks, captures, and threats. And so, very easy to criticize, very difficult to form a good technique, right? So, how do we fix this issue? My method of creating a robust calculation technique is by learning how to identify tactical targets. And these targets have to be reasoned from first principles. I'll give you an example. First, you think about something you want to gain, something you want to train yourself to spot to get out of the tactics. Let's say you want to win material, and then you reason from there. How do you win material? You win material when there's a piece with attackers and no defenders. Some attacker, at least one attacker, and zero defenders. And then you continue with that line of logic. If hanging pieces represent material gain opportunity, then pieces with zero attackers and zero defenders represent potential mating material gain opportunity. And that's the thing that you should train yourself to spot, pieces with no defenders. And then that's where a good piece of advice comes from, which I agree with, that loose pieces drop off. And you can repeat this process for every mini objective you have in chess. So other tactical targets. If you want to train yourself to spot back rank checkmate, learn to recognize 3 pawns in front of the king, for example.
Mhm.
Or learn to categorize certain squares as a target if you can potentially land a fork. And in doing so, you have full scalability of the technique. Because if you want to train yourself to spot a more complex type of tactic, you simply need to expand your definition on what constitutes a target. And the other thing I talked about is on checks, captures, and threats presupposing a presence of a tactic in the position. And what you need with a good technique is that it should tell you both when and where to look. So when you identify an undefended piece on move 23, for example, that tells you now is the time to look for tactics. Because the very presence of a tactic tells you now is the time. And it also tells you where to look as well. If the undefended piece is here, look over here for the tactic. If it's over there, look over there for the tactic. And the last thing, which I talked about, was false signals. Now, make no mistake, false signals still happen with my technique here. I don't think there's a way to avoid it completely. However, the difference is the false signal will not be so useless. On the contrary, it will be useful to identify the target anyway. It tells you where to set up your traps and where to prepare for a tactic to emerge. A lot of amateurs think that tactics simply sprout out of nowhere, when in fact, if you know what the seeds of tactics look like, you'll be much better prepared. And that's something about my coaching style. I'll tell you about my students. If, say, they missed a tactic on move 12, I will not talk so much about the position on move 12. Instead, I'll go back, move 11, move 10, move 9, and show certain features of the tactic were already present. There may be an undefended piece, not yet exploitable, but it's still there, allowing the student to anticipate the tactic much better. And anticipation of an opportunity will prepare you much better than reacting to it on the spot. Seeing the targets on move 9 would have primed the student to spot the tactic on move 12 very easily.
I love
Yeah,
that,
that's it.
Azel, because a lot of students I find will say, ask them why they lost the game. Oh, I just made a dumb blunder. That was it. I'll just move on to the next game. Well, that dumb blunder was on move 12. But what happened on move 9? You left that piece loose. Move 10, something happened. Moved 11, you opened up your king. Bam, move 12, there was a fork. It wasn't
Exactly.
because of the blunder, the one move. It was because you set it up the last couple moves leading up to the blunder as well.
Yeah, exactly. And so priming yourself to spot the tactic is very important. And also, as you mentioned, dumb blunders are not simple dumb blunders. They usually reveal something much deeper about your chess playing style. So whenever you make a mistake, it's important to learn two things from it. One is on a technical level, what makes the mistake a mistake? Like moving my queen here was a bad move because it got trapped. That's the technical explanation. And the other part of it is what the move says about yourself as a chess player. Moving my queen here means I underestimate the possibility of queens getting trapped. There's something more about you. Or if the way your queen got trapped was a backwards knight move. You could say, I tend to miss backwards move easily. And so now you're able to customize the training plan for yourself because you know what the mistakes are saying about you as a chess player.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to touch on too is that I think the biggest knock that solving tactics get is that you're shown a position and you know there's a tactic there. And that's something that tactics trainers get wrong all the time. And it's something we're actually trying to fix with our tactics trainer, train.chessgoals.com, by the way, is that we want to throw in some positions that there are no tactics, or like there's maybe like a loose piece, but it can't actually be exploited. But that's something we're definitely going to be testing out in the future. But the biggest problem, this is just me ranting about tactics trainers right now, is that you can maybe win a piece in an easy way, but the computer will just give up and give you the piece because it's like the best way to do it. But you'd never have to like really fight for that advantage against a human way. And so we're putting together like a bunch of very human lines to actually prove that you can win that tactic. And when it comes to playing over the board, you have to actually see those lines, see more than just like attacking a knight and maybe it gets trapped and maybe it doesn't. You have to see all the side effects of different resulting positions. And that's something that goes a lot with calculation. Like you need to be able to see a few different variants and extremely sharp positions too.
Yeah, exactly. That so yeah, another way to work around this is to allow the computer to have takebacks. So you're forced to explore every single variation. And interesting that you bring up this concept on tactics, needing to see the whole thing to the end, because ultimately what makes rating of puzzles high or low, whether it's categorized as a difficult puzzle or an easy puzzle, is just whether people are solving it or not. So some of the low rated puzzles could be really complex, but because it's so easy to just stumble on the correct moves along the way because it looks tempting and all,
The
then you're
check.
able to solve it. Exactly. And Matt, remember back in 2021, we played some Puzzle Rush, or
Mhm.
2022. The reason I can go so quickly on Puzzle Rush, even on the complex puzzles, is that if they are low rated, I understand just go for the most intuitive move. Because most likely the other beginners just stumbled upon it as well.
Yeah. And I really loved your point about how to solve the tactics puzzles too, because one example I thought of, and I'm working on this beginner's course now, Azel, so I'm reviewing a ton of games from players rated under 1,000.
Yeah.
And I've seen kind of different playing styles. And some people have the playing style of, I just go for checks and captures and threats. That's it. And
Mm-hmm.
other players actually look like they have a deeper playing style under the 1,000 level, and they play much more solid games. So, for example, the loose pieces drop off concept. You might have a loose knight and a king that's exposed. And if you're just used to playing Puzzle Rush and listening to coaches say, look for checks and captures, okay, I make this check, boom, forks king and knight. Now, let's say that knight is defended by another knight, and we have the knight, we can still do the fork, but it's going to be defended. And we have a pawn that can dislodge the defensive knight. If you're only looking for checks and captures, you have no clue that you can remove the defender, which is really just one tier higher than a fork, right? Let's attack the knight, it moves, and then we do the fork. But you can't find that if you're only looking for the checks.
Exactly, exactly. And this is the point on the technique of identifying targets being scalable. Because if, say, for some reason, you're not able to solve this tactic, you can simply expand your definition on what constitutes a target. And a piece defending another critical piece that could do whatever counts as a target. And then that helps you find that pawn push next time.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I hope I'm
Yeah,
not
exactly
getting,
right.
excessively deep into certain positions and people are not knowing what they're saying.
No,
No, I think
I
this is a good.
follow.
Yeah, go ahead,
Yeah,
Jesse.
yeah, I followed it, and I'm nothing special. But it's interesting hearing you talk about tactics because in your Chessable bio it says for more than a year, Azel combed over 20,000 tactics exercises. He was so certain that like these mass trainings will give him an edge. Like you were up to doing 3 100 tactic exercises in a single day. Is that something that you really found helped you improve?
No, but that was how I figured out that I needed to develop a technique that actually works.
Uh,
The
so
reason I did so many tactics, by the way, I don't recommend people spend their time all the time doing puzzles. I did it only because of my situation. That's I was in school. Whenever you're using your phone, at some point a teacher might come and stop you from using your phone. So you can only do tactics. You can't play a whole Blitz game. Otherwise, you're going to have to forfeit a lot of them and get banned on chess.com. So that's the reason I did a lot of puzzles. And that's how I also discovered the technique and the many issues that people face that checks, captures, and threats don't work. They don't apply to real games, and how you should be improving the surrounding intuition and visualization of it.
yeah, that's really interesting. You developed like kind of like a strategic play strategy from the foundation of tactics. Seems a little backwards, but it makes sense when you explain it.
Hmm?
That kind of leads me to a question that we had for you. So just a query, fancy word, just a query for us busy adults. What would Azel's recommended blend of playing and studying be for someone who says maybe they have maybe 5 hours per week of chess? And then, specifically allotting time for studying, would that be mostly calculation and tactics?
Actually, usually for study plan type of questions, I refer people to Matt because I have seen Matt your study plans, and I agree with the principles of it very much. Principles being, if you're aiming to be a chess player, spend most of your time playing games and analyzing them, of course. And whatever study on calculation, whatever, that is more as a should play a supporting role, rather than the main thing. It's a bit like basketballers doing push-ups. That's just a little bit of support. Spend most of your time playing ball.
So let's dig a little deeper into this specific player, Azel. So he's got 5 hours a week.
Yep,
This is James. He's one of our course authors. He's 1700 FIDE after the recent update. I think 1705.
yep.
Um, how would you recommend he break down those 5 hours? And like not necessarily knowing his playing style, but what would you say to have the best chance of improvement?
1700. It would be mostly playing games. Now, you know what, Matt? I'll just be quoting your study plan. Play most of your games, analyze them, and alternate between a fast week and a slow week. Depending, and your definition of fast and slow is dependent on the time control you want to get good at. So if you're a rapid player, fast would be Blitz and slow would be rapid. If you're a Blitz player, then fast would be Bullet and slow would be Blitz. And
Eh,
you can get very far just playing those games. Now, depending on how passionate you are about chess, it's very possible to squeeze out a few extra hours of training, usually in spare pockets of time. So whenever I do my chess training, I have my prime time and I have my lousy time. So the prime time is where I do things uninterrupted, like playing and analyzing games. And the lousy time is when I'm on the bus, whatever, and that's when I'm solving tactics or looking at Chessable courses, something like that. So James, if you want to squeeze in a few extra hours, if you have the passion for it, then lousy time for those other activities, prime time for playing and analyzing.
Yeah, well, we appreciate the props on the study plans. This is a free thing that we give away to anybody, so there's links in the description for your free study plan if you want that. Um, so we talked a little bit about rating changes. So I have a statement here from FIDE. So as of January 2024, FIDE will apply a one-time rating increase of 0 to 400 points to players with a standard FIDE rating below 2000. The formula is based on the adjustment, blah, blah, blah. So players will have between 0 and 400 ELO points added to their ratings. For example, a player rated at 1,000 would get an increase of 400 points, while a player rated 1,500 would get the increased rating by 200 points. The points added will gradually decrease from 400 for those rated 1,000 to 0 for those rated 2,000. The higher the starting rating, the incrementally lower the increase. Players with a standard FIDE rating of 2,000 or more will retain their current rating. I was shocked to see this because I've been following the Botez sisters doing their tournament in Prague, and for no reason at all, Andrea went from 1700 to 1800 overnight without playing any games. I'm very curious on the takes here, and I'm curious why this even happened.
Right. So first, we need to understand the rating economics of FIDE, how the life cycle is supposed to happen, and then we can comment on the rating adjustments accordingly. So here's how you have a prosperous rating economy. You have kids starting off at their low ratings and they improve quickly. And so by giving them a higher development coefficient, K40, they can get to master level while stealing as little rating from the people around them as possible. And then once they become adults, once they become high rated, or even cross 2400 and drop to K10, that's when they get older and decline, and they gradually dish out their rating to society, until the end of their career. That's how you keep a healthy rating economy. And so there's a constant flow of rating, because to maybe you're stealing 400 points from society to gain 800 points as a kid. But as you're dropping off, you're able to give points to other people at a faster rate than you're losing them because your development coefficient has dropped. So that's the way I believe things should be. And if it's calibrated correctly, you wouldn't need to do any rating adjustments. Now, what FIDE didn't foresee, and I don't blame them for, is the effect of COVID, where everybody's rating is now frozen, and those who are lower rated will improve faster than those who are higher rated, thereby shrinking the gap between higher and lower rated players. So what used to be an 800 FIDE point difference is now maybe 400 points. So rating gaps in FIDE don't mean as much anymore. And it's good that they are representing this by closing that gap, by giving low rated players that boost. So yes, I understand why it needs to happen. In fact, when I was looking at all this rating economics mess going on during COVID, I was very happy that I crossed 2200 before it all started. Because being 2200 in, let's say, 2022, I think it's tougher than being 2200 in 2020.
And we see
So,
that rating deflation all the way up through the top. I saw some data it was when they first kind of announced this rating change was going to take effect, or that they were at least considering it. I saw some data, and if
mhm.
you were rated 100 to like 400 points lower than your opponent, you had a much higher expected value on average than the ratings would dictate. So playing lower rated players was just terrible. So if you're a 2200 or trying to get 2200 and you're playing Swiss events and you're one of the top players, uh, you better be 2300 strength just to get a 2200 rating. So what do you think about this going forward for your own rating, Azel? So now we have all these players getting back to where they should be. Do you feel like that gives you a higher chance to increase, or it just keeps you there if your skill level is the same and kind of reduces that risk of decreasing when you're not getting any weaker?
I think this merely restores the balance. So previously, you could say that I will be a bit overrated as of 2022. And now, if I were to train for competition again, I'd probably be at fair rating.
And do,
Maybe I think it's not that simple. It takes a bit of time for this rating effect to wash over the whole economy before it has its effect. Because 2000 rated players are still 2000. You need time for them to beat the lower rated players who got their inflation. So the 2000 climbs to 2100. And then I have that effect playing the 2100 rated player.
so had you been active the whole time through COVID, you might have lost 50 to 100 points, and now you can get it back until you kind of reach that equilibrium.
Yeah, yeah. Well, because the flow of capital, I mean, the flow of rating is going to be quite layered. Because beginners will see the biggest difference in that flow. They are the primary recipient of this injection, of this stimulus. So previously, if you were to play a 1000 rated player, now you're playing a 1400 rated player. So you have the greatest enjoyment of that rating injection. But if you're at 2000, you have to wait for this rating to like flow forward up the
Mm-hmm.
rating ladder until you experience it. So I think we need a couple of months to a year for this effect to play out.
And the thing that OTB ratings are missing, that online ratings do a good job of, is online ratings use Glicko. So they don't have the K factor, but they do have the rating deviation, the RD value. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're someone that rarely plays, you should go up or down more until your rating stabilizes. That's something that's missing from FIDE ratings, right? So USCF, for example, we run into kids like locally even. They have gained 400 points on chess.com and they've played 2 USCF events in that stretch. And it's like, well, what are you going to do now? Even if you increase their K factor a little bit, maybe they gain 100 points in a tournament, but they just beat up on 4 people higher rated than them, and they're all going to lose points at a pretty good clip.
Right. Okay, my suspicion is that Glicko would not work for FIDE. And the reason for that is Glicko makes the most competitive players have the slowest rating change. And the most competitive players are the one climbing to the top. So what you'll find is that as everybody climbs to the top, their rating increase slows down. And they are stealing rating from other people at a very slow rate. The less experienced people will lose points fast, and the experienced people will gain points very slowly. The reason it doesn't affect chess.com as much, first of all, is that anytime they want, they can write one line of code and get everybody's rating back to equality. And the second thing
Yeah.
is they have a natural source of rating injections, of rating stimulus, when because if you talk to friends, non-chess playing friends, or friends who just play a little bit of chess, it's very common that they created a chess.com account. They were 1200, whatever, and then they just kept losing points, and then they threw the account away when they got to 300. And that's where all this fresh rating comes from. That's what and why it's important that chess.com, they have the rating easily, so they can afford to use Glicko. But FIDE, I don't think they can afford to do it.
Yeah, that's a good point because chess.com, like let's take Blitz ratings, for example. If you're a really fast improving young player, how many points of skill level can you realistically gain in one game? It's a fraction of 1 point, right?
Yeah,
Like you're not gaining more than 1 point a game. So you're not really ever stealing from an older player because your rating is just like consistently staying right at your skill level. You're playing so many games, but over the board, just they can't compete with that. There's not enough games to keep up with the current system.
exactly. Exactly, yeah. So I think the over the board system is quite well designed in terms of giving kids a higher development coefficient, and higher rated players and older players have a lower development coefficient.
One thing USCF did, and I don't know if FIDE has done this, Azel, USCF has rating floors. And how those work is once you reach a certain threshold, it's based on where you are and how many games you played at that rating, but there's a floor where you can't drop below it. And older players at a certain point regress to their floor. And then they might be 100 points weaker than their rating, 200 points weaker, but you're still getting the gains of playing that player who's
Right.
actually at their floor.
Yeah, because they're just the punching bags on the ground. You can just like jump off them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're never going to get any lower than that.
Mm-hmm. Does
Um,
FIDE have that?
FIDE does not okay, as of 2019, FIDE does not have this rating floor. They have, what do you call it? No, they will delist you if you fall below 1000, as of 2019. I'm not sure how it is now. And I have seen the most ingenious thing that an Indian man in Singapore did. He was 1000, he was rated 1008, something like that. And he was going to play two tournaments, one in Singapore and one in Europe. As of then, the European rating economy was great. So if you go there, you're going to have a much better performance than you would in Singapore. And so what he did, probably by accident, is that he lost some rating in the Singapore tournament. As a 1008 rated player, he found a way to drop below 1000. And then he got delisted off the FIDE platform. He went to Europe to play, and then he had a performance rating of 1700. And so he just jumped 700 points straight away, no problem. Whereas, had he been a stronger player and did well in the Singapore tournament, he'd only be 1200 by the end of the day.
Yeah. So he's almost sandbagged away, he's
Yeah,
purposely
yeah,
dropped his rating.
exactly.
That's incredible. That's a great story. We have a couple questions here for you. So, Aaron in chat says, your calculation courses on Chessable are really wonderful. So thank you for that. How important is it for new players rated maybe 800 to 1100 to invest in a new coach?
How important is it? Well, it's quite tough to say because naturally, with my controversial opinions on checks, captures, and threats, I disagree with the approach of most coaches. Now, but with that said, it's not like those coaches can't produce good students. They can. So find a coach. So what I can say that is constant across all ratings is that you should find a coach that makes you passionate for the game. Whether the passion is in his energy or in the brilliance of his techniques, anything to get you interested, because passion will always improve your rating. Whereas techniques is still up for debate, is still up to maybe even your personal style. So how important is it? It's it's tough to say. It's tough to say. But the more passion the coach brings you, the more important it is for you to have coaching.
It's interesting you say that because I get asked like what's my number one improvement tip, and I always say the same thing, like just make sure you're doing it so it's fun, so you keep doing it. Because like if you just study for 14 hours one week, that's gonna probably bore you, and you're probably not gonna get a lot of immediate result from that. But if you would have played Bullet for 14 hours, like you'd probably stick with it a lot longer. So maybe that's better long term for chess improvement or sticking with it because the chess improvement takes time. It's like fitness. You're not gonna get super fit in 3 weeks. It's gonna take years and years. Another question: what is the best way for a new player to learn how to best analyze their games?
What's the best way for a new player? I have to refer you to Matt once again with his levels of analysis. See, there's so this. See, this is why I keep talking about chess goals. All these years. It, it's because of all this great content. So
I do
there
feel
are
like
different
whenever
level. Yeah.
everything you say makes sense to me, right? So it's like everything just sounds good, and I'm nodding the whole time, like, sounds good. So one question I have for you, Azel, are you currently taking students? I hope you don't mind if I ask you that on air.
No, I'm not taking students.
Okay.
So, but I don't want the ideas that I have about chess to die out. So I like avenues like this podcast to spread it. Even if other coaches takes it, I'm happy with it. Especially if it's the Chess Goals team.
Thanks. Okay. I'll take a crack at the how to best analyze your games combined with the coach question because I think these two questions from Aaron can be linked together.
All
We
right.
don't want to learn bad habits from a coach, and we don't want to form bad habits by just playing thousands of games ourselves and not having a coach. So I think one of the most valuable things a coach can do for a student, especially a student who doesn't want to spend a ton of money or they really want to be self-sufficient, have the coach teach you to analyze your own games. It's like teaching you how to fish, right? And then you
Yes.
create a system where you go through your games and like Aza was talking about, you recognize I'm bad at backward knight moves. I'm bad at, I miss king safety. Maybe I'm good at doing these certain things. Start to formulate what's working and what's not. And you might only have to meet with a coach once every couple months just to make sure you're on the right track. But then you go to work and you play a whole bunch of games that your coach would never have time to review all those games for you, but you know your system and how to review your own games.
It's a fantastic point. Yeah. Learn how to review your own games. In fact, I'm going to add on to this point on game analysis because I can't just tell you to get a coach, learn how to analyze games, and then say I'm not offering coaching services. So I'm gonna give you all my techniques on my principles on evaluation. So the first thing to do is check out Matt's levels of analysis. That one, basically, the idea is the depth of your analysis should be proportional to the length of your game. So you don't waste 2 hours analyzing a bullet game, nor do you analyze a classical game in 1 minute. And the principle I'll add on to that is that everything should be intuitive. Intuition is key for you to absorb the lessons. And I'll give you some of the techniques, some of the things that I do with my students or used to do with my students. One of that is the 3 second rule. And the 3 second rule is in post game analysis, once you learn what the best move is in a given position, no matter how complex it is, you have to explain it in 3 seconds. You don't have to fully explain it. You just have to give a sufficiently intriguing explanation to motivate yourself to explore it further. And because sometimes there are moves that are way too ridiculous for you to consider, queen sacrifice or something. So you don't bother investing any time calculating it. But if you force yourself to think about that move for 30 seconds, you would have realized, hey, the ridiculous move is actually the best one. It's the same with real life. Let's say I'm a physically ugly person, but I have a great personality. So women would really love me if they got to know my great personality. But they're not going to go on a full date with me because of my appearance. So what should I do? I should make my personality as apparent as possible in the shortest period of time. Make it sufficiently intriguing for them to go on a date with me in just 2 sentences. In the same way, complex chess lines, give yourself a short explanation that compels you to dig deeper. Let's say there was a crazy queen sacrifice. It takes you 30 seconds to work out. What you can say in 3 seconds is, sacrificing the queen severely weakens the dark squares around the enemy king. It does not fully explain the solution, but it compels you to dig deeper and eventually find out that that's the best line and what a great personality it has. So to drive the point home, one of the mistakes people make in analysis when they ask why, when I ask them, why is the good move good? They're going to give a bunch of lines. They're going to say, oh, I should play knight d5 sacrifice in the Sicilian because after e takes d5, e takes d5, the knight could go here or there. And by the time they're done explaining everything in 5 minutes, there's no sense of it being intuitive. You can't wrap your brain around all of that. And that's why the 3-second rule is one of the things that I have. I have a couple more techniques, but any questions about 3-second rule here?
I've heard of the 5-second rule. I haven't heard of the 3-second technique though. I like that one. Yeah, so talk more about intuition. I know that was something you wanted to get more into.
Oh yeah. Intuition is other things on intuition. Oh, one thing that's very important for intuition is emotions. Chess is thought of as a very stoic sport, but you need emotions because emotions and intuition are very closely linked. Now, Matt, you're a professional statistician, right?
Mhm.
So you're great at math. And if some kid came up to you and said, Matt, 30 is an odd number because it's divisible by 3, you're going to get some kind of emotional reaction. Maybe it's frustration, maybe it's humor, whatever, but you have some strong emotion connected to it because it's so intuitively wrong to you. And I want that for my students as well. I want to make them emotionally enjoy or suffer certain positions to accelerate their learning. And I'm going to elaborate a bit so I'm not thought of as an abusive coach. Let's say I want to teach my student John the importance of bringing rooks to open files. I would say, John, play rook to e1 and look at how happy that rook is. It controls the whole e file. It could invade on e7, mess up the enemy's position. You could have a rook lift to e3. And you know what? For the next 10 seconds, sit and enjoy this level of freedom you have in the position and force a smile. And now John will have some positive emotion surrounding moving rooks to open files, which translates to stronger intuition. Conversely, if I want to show how bad things can get, let's say John does not control the center very well. He always neglects center control. I would say, John, look at how cramped your position is. Your f6 knight can't go anywhere. Your knight, your other knight, your bishops, they all can't move. And now for 10 seconds, put yourself in the shoes of your pieces and feel their sadness, feel their lack of future. They have nothing to look forward to for the rest of their life. And they'll be thinking, oh, if only I had more pawns in the center, then I wouldn't be so cramped. And in doing so, John now understands the importance of center control and emotionally hates a lack of center control. And that again ties back to intuition.
I like that a lot. I've never heard of trying to attach your emotions in advance to the different topics. I like that a lot, Azel.
Yeah, you can do it. You can do it for any activity that you want to do. Let's say, I don't know, Jesse, are you a runner? I recall one of your videos talking something about running.
Yeah, I run a little bit.
Right. And so I think if you force a smile while you run, at least that's what I do, I would enjoy the idea of running more than if I didn't. And if I were to constantly say positive things to myself on how I'm enjoying myself, even if I'm truly suffering, that makes the activity a lot easier. So that's one of the human advantages. It's a disadvantage and an advantage depending on how you adapt to it, because the emotions accelerate your learning. It accelerates whatever it is you want to do.
It's
Yeah, that's something I've talked about not that long ago, is attaching like a positive emotion to something you aspire to do. So like if you can't force yourself to study chess, it's like okay, you restrict yourself to only having your favorite drink while you study chess. So you have that pairing of like something you already want to do with something you're trying to force yourself to do. But you take it a step further with like attaching negative emotions to like bad chess positions. That's really interesting. I never heard it explained it like that.
Exactly, exactly. Pair your favorite drink with studying chess. Pair your worst emotion with a poor center control. It works all
Yeah.
the same.
so could you
That's
do
funny.
this during a game, Azel? Like say you have a little jar of candies at the table. Then you also have like a buzzer in your pocket that's going to electrocute you.
Now that's just chocolate chess, right? When you capture a piece, you get to eat it afterwards.
Okay.
I use this more as a training method rather than something that happens mid-game. Because ultimately, you want to make sure there's no doubt as to what you're conditioning yourself to do. Because if you get a kid to play chocolate chess, the kid just becomes a greedy chess player. And they're not necessarily appreciating that sometimes you have to hold back on the material and so on.
Yeah, and there's other downsides of chocolate chess too. Might get
Yeah, I
sleepy,
mean,
overweight, who knows?
yes, only one game per set. So
Get the chocolate all over the pieces. I mean, who wants that?
yeah. So yes, that's on emotionality, on intuition. The things you say, the way you sequence your ideas is also very important. In fact, I talk about this in my course, Introduction to Chess Calculation. I have a mini lesson which is called Mind Your Language. And the idea is that however you sequence your thoughts, it conditions your subconscious to think in that way. So precision is required in the words you say to yourself. And however you want to structure your sentence, you should sequence the ideas like you would in a real game. For example, if you say, I should play queen h5 to attack this target, I consider it an incorrect sequence because that's not how chess players think. No one plays queen h5 and then realizes it attacks h7. Instead, they identify h7 as the target first, and then that's why they play queen h5. And for this reason, I have a slight bias towards the word therefore rather than because. With therefore, you explain the cause first, therefore the effect. With because, you have effect because of the cause. And people think of the cause first. That's how the logic flows. And that's how I would condition my students to verbalize their analysis. Use therefore sentences, have the cause, then the effect.
So, what do you think of the advice improve your worst piece? Because I find sometimes beginning players will hear that, oh, improve your worst piece.
Yes,
And it can,
yeah. I,
go ahead.
All right. I'm going to say that is still correct. So the cause and effect can switch depending on which one you're seeing first. If you saw the bad piece first, if say your queen was in such a terrible situation, and that's why queen h5 is a good move, then it's correct to say I'm playing queen h5 because of where it was. Or rather, my queen is in a bad spot, therefore I'm playing my queen to h5.
I see. Yeah, I
So the,
wasn't
the cause and
sure.
effect may switch around depending on what's the reason you compelled to, whether it was a push factor or a pull factor.
Yeah, I like that.
Ultimately, the main thing is you have to sequence your ideas in the same way that you would in a real game. And do I have any more on intuition? Yes, I have one more. I have one more. That's my favorite.
Yes.
I also teach it very briefly in the calculation course. It's the Where's Wally technique.
Where's
Where's
Wally?
Wally? You know the book, children's book.
In America, it's Where's Waldo?
Waldo. Perfect, perfect. No, the reason, okay, no, I'm so glad to hear is Where's Waldo in America. Because in the Chessable video, I said Where's Waldo, and then when I went to look up the book, I realized it was Where's Wally. So it's good that I didn't make a mistake there.
No, it's Waldo. You're right.
Yeah. Um, I don't know. When I search it on Google, I see Where's Wally. Maybe if I turn on a USA VPN, I might get Where's Waldo. I'm
Oh,
gonna
it's
call it,
British. Where's
yeah.
Wally is British and Where's Waldo is Canada and USA. I did not know that.
No.
Right. Well, anyway, for people who think we're speaking Chinese, Where's Wally is a children's puzzle book. There'll be a cartoon drawing of some setting, like a fun fair, a beach, whatever, and there'll be 700 people in the drawing. One of them will be Wally or Waldo, an iconic man in glasses and a red striped shirt, and your job is to find him amid the sea of faces. Now, imagine Wally was in the bottom left corner, and I photo edited away 699 people, leaving Wally just isolated and conspicuous in the bottom left corner. I show you this photo edited picture with just Wally in it, and you can't help but notice him. And now I remove this picture, I give you the original puzzle with the 700 people. But it's too late. The puzzle is ruined for you because you can't unsee Wally in that corner. And we can use this inability to unsee things to our advantage in pattern recognition. Let's say we have a checkmating pattern. Usually there are 25 pieces in the middle game, and maybe 5 of them are relevant for the checkmate. So what you can do to make the pattern more obvious to you is isolate that 5 pieces, put it on a blank chessboard, and appreciate it while it's isolated, while it's conspicuous. And once you go back to the original position with 25 pieces, again, you can't unsee those 5 pieces there. You're going to notice the pattern. You can't help but notice the pattern. The puzzle has been ruined for you. And that's the West Wally technique.
I've never heard of it said that way, but I love it. And there's a book, How to Beat Your Dad at Chess. Have you looked at that one, Azel?
I've never looked at that.
It doesn't quite break it down as simple as you're saying, but what they do is they present a theme. And first, they do a very simple version, not a lot of pieces. Like, here's the queen and bishop lined up. Here's how you do the checkmate on an h7 on the diagonal. And then they add pieces and then they make more complicated. Maybe there's a fourth one where it's like you combine that plus another theme. But I really have enjoyed that book for that reason because it resonates with kids. And I've only used it with kids, but they learn the technique first and then they can't unsee it when there's 10 more pieces on the board.
Exactly. Just
Yeah.
ruin all those West Wally puzzles.
I think another course that does this really well, I haven't actually looked at it, but the Checkmate Patterns manual on Chessable, that one had by Crafty Raff and then John Bartholomew did the videos. That one it's like one of the best Chessable courses in terms of rating. But I think that one really works on what you guys are talking about. So it lets you recognize all these different mating patterns that can hopefully help you out. So if you want to, take this to the next level, you can check out that course. But I have not checked it out, so I can't say
Yeah.
firsthand.
No, I have checked it out. It's absolutely a great book, great course. And the West Wally technique and this checkmating patterns deal with different things. So the checkmating patterns manual, it gives you a starting repertoire of mating patterns, but there's no way a single course can exhaustively cover all the patterns. So you will need to have some technique to internalize new patterns on your own. And West Wally is one way to do that.
Okay, interesting. Expanding off of the Checkmate manual.
I have a question on that just to expand on a little further, Azel. So say
Please.
you have a position and there's one really strong move, but it's a complicated position. Is a good technique to just start removing pieces one by one, try to simplify that board as much as possible where it still works, just to kind of sear it into your brain that you can remember it and then put the pieces back and look at it again?
It depends on the role that other pieces play. So in the case of checkmate, you can do that because you're just trying to isolate the pattern. But in some cases, you need to have the other pieces and see their effect or lack thereof on the position. I've just thought of the example. You know Nigel Short's king walk, the one where he walks all the way up to h6.
Yep.
If you isolated the pattern, it looks so obvious. Yeah, just move your king up to h6, and then you have checkmate. The beauty of it is that there are other pieces on board that have no effect on the king's path. So it depends on whether you need to see the other pieces or not. In the case of a checkmating pattern that, like a back rank mate, you only need to see the few pieces. But if the thing that makes it not intuitive is because there are other distracting pieces, then you need those other pieces to show that, hey, they don't actually affect Nigel Short's king walk up to h6.
Yeah, that's funny. I just started rereading Reassess Your Chess, and that's one of the first like puzzles that came up that comes up in that book. And I saw that one my second time through, and just like you're saying, you can't unsee it. It's like you see like it's Nigel Short, you see, oh well, this is the King Walk game. Like it's which is exactly what you're just talking about. One of those patterns you can't unsee. Is there other stuff you wanted to talk about with your course, or should we like go to something else? Or
Well, since you've asked, I would like to show my Telegram channel. I
oh yeah,
will,
sure.
yeah, we will figure a way to squeeze it in later. So y'all in the live chat, unfortunately, are not going to be able to see it. But I'll talk a little bit about the Telegram channel. See, I've all these ideas that I've just given to y'all on the podcast that I didn't want to just keep hidden away. So I used the Telegram channel as an avenue to get it all out. And it originally started off as a blindfold chess boot camp where it teaches you everything you need to know about visualization. So I will give you all some visualization lessons here, just to give you an idea of what the Telegram channel is about and what you can expect to benefit from it. So the reason I'm passionate about visualization is that it underlies everything that you need to do. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you need to visualize and you need to do it deeply. And blindfold chess is the ultimate form of visualization. And that's the focus of the course, the Telegram channel, that is. But the issue that a lot of people have with visualization is that they don't put in as much people don't put in as much effort as they should into visualization, and they tend to overestimate their abilities. And it's not because they are arrogant or anything. It's just that they have no concept of what real clear visualization looks like. If I were to, I can tell you a story back when I was 8 years old. That's when I got glasses. Now, before I got glasses, I thought my eyesight was perfect. I could see, I could read everything just fine. Or also I thought. And if you asked me to rate my visual clarity on a scale of 0 to 100, I would have said 95 easy. And once I went to the optometrist and the guy made me my glasses, I put it on as like, wow, now this is 95. And what I had before was a 70. So that's what people need. People need an experience of what true peak visualization feels like. And then they can use that as their reference on how much effort they need to put in. So you have never really experienced visual clarity, compared to say myself, and I have not experienced the level of visual clarity that Timur Gareev has, the world blindfold chess champion. And what you need is an exercise that gives you that clarity, and that's something that I offer in the boot camp. I give you all these other lessons along the way. There is memory versus visualization. There's implicit, explicit memory. All these lessons, and then we build up to day 8, where you sit with me and visualize a 4-move sequence over 30 minutes. You get your visualization as strong as possible, and then now that becomes the benchmark on how hard you need to train for your visualization. So that's the Telegram channel. I'll see if I can drop it here. Just
One
confirm that
question
the
I
link
have for
works.
you,
Yeah,
Azel.
please.
What are your thoughts? So you mentioned Timor. What are your thoughts on blindfold chess as a training method, and how far should you take it? So let's say you learn to reliably play one game blindfold. Is that good enough, or should you keep training it, or do you feel like it's not even that valuable to play one game to start with?
One game, I mean, the alternative being playing 3 games at once. So, all right, if you need to play more blindfold games. Not really. I think playing multiple games of blindfold chess at once is just a byproduct of playing blindfold chess very well. So that's what you can train. And on the point of blindfold chess, I can tell you one of the mistakes I made with it is that I got too deep into it. So whenever I'm reading a chess book on openings and game strategy, I would challenge myself to do it without setting up the pieces. And the issue with that is that I became very good at blindfold chess, but I wasn't very good at the topics I was trying to learn because the burden of visualization was distracting me from the core lessons. So what I'd say is if you want to train visualization, isolate the muscles. If it's visualization time, train visualization. But if it's time for you to learn calculation or your end games, set up the board and then play with it from there so that the lessons, the concepts there are most apparent.
That makes a lot of
Yeah,
sense. Yeah.
could you explain the difference between calculation and visualization? Because I think that's something that a lot of people group together.
Right. So calculation, it could be more on technique, could be on identifying targets, and how you sequence your thought process. For example, after you have your first candidate move, how do you pivot to the second candidate move? That's more on calculation, that's more on technique. Visualization is how deeply can you visualize, see a position ahead. If you see the position after 5 moves, how clear is that in your mind? That's what visualization is.
Did you feel like when you improved your visualization, your calculation got better too?
Yeah, well, improving your visualization is like doing any sport but with more oxygen in the air. You just feel so much more energetic and you can run a lot faster and so on. And that's why that's the benefit of visualization. It's not so much that visualization improves calculation, it's that visualization improves everything.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's interesting. I'm wondering, do you have any current chess ambitions, or are you gonna just gonna kind of chill with your CM title?
Now I'm chilling with the CM title.
Uh,
It's interesting you bring this up, right? Because this ties back to another FIDE rule, and that FIDE rule is on the 400-point difference. I don't know, Jesse, if you have the handbook that talks about that. Previously, anyone who has a rating gap of greater than 400 points, it's treated like a 400-point gap. So if I, as a 2200, if I beat an 1800 or I beat a 1000 rated player, I get the same amount of rating. And they removed that rule recently, not recently, a few years ago. So now I couldn't, I can't like beat low rated players on my way to FM. That's one of the things that I was seriously considering doing. I know a local tournament that is just full of 1000 to 1200 rated players playing standard games. And I noted if I played for 2 months straight at K40 and I won 32 games in a row, I'll become FIDE master. And and the way that FIDE worked around it, they didn't really completely destroy the rule. They said that we will allow you this exception for 1 game per tournament. Meaning if I'm supposed to gain 2 rating points per game and I won 8 games, they say only the lowest rated player counts. So you just get 2 points for that whole tournament. And this doesn't really stop me, does it? Because all they did was raise the price tag for how much shame that you need to do the FIDE master title thing. So I could just play 1 game per tournament for 2 years and I'll be FIDE master anyway. But I think there's no need for that. So that's why I have no ambitions for chess for improving my rating.
yeah, gaining a rating up at your level seems just impossible, so I don't envy you. All right, another question. What are the most frequent calculation errors players make? Or maybe effort, dismissing candidate moves too soon, something along those lines.
Checks, captures, and threats. I'm not sure because again I have a whole sea of information that I have to retrieve when you ask me about calculation errors. Now on the points listed by Aaron, effort. I think I'm not a big fan of pushing students to put in significantly more effort because what I prefer they do is make things more intuitive, or as I said with the 3 second rule, give something that motivates you to calculate further. Because I find that in life in these disciplines when you're relying on discipline excessively and not any of the natural ways a human brain is supposed to function, it's not going to do very well. So effort is usually not a big problem. A lack of effort stems from an issue with the technique or the development of your intuition. Because I think if you compare the brain activity of myself versus a 1400, we are probably thinking and using just as much energy as each other. I just have my intuitions better wired. So that's the point on effort. Dismissing candidate moves too soon, again, that's an intuition thing. If you dismiss something that was good, then it's your inability to explain why it could be good in 3 seconds. That ties back to the 3 second rule.
Yeah, I've heard the quote before, grandmasters look less but see more because they can just see the board and their intuition is so strong they don't need to consider all the weird sidelines because they just know they're bad. So it sounds like you were kind of getting at the same type of thing.
Yes, yes, and Jesse, thank you for that because now I get to show my cause once again. By identifying targets, it actually helps you think like a master. Because when you see two targets, you know that's where I exploit. I can ignore all the other distractions. And that's the way masters think as well. They see what they need to see and exclude all the distractions. They see less to see more.
One example that
Yeah.
I always like to give, Azel, is take a player that's much stronger than you, right? So let's compare yourself to Magnus Carlsen. Let's say you have 1 hour to play a whole game. How much time do you think Magnus Carlsen would need on his side of the clock to beat you?
I'm going to say how much time it takes to run to the toilet plus 1 minute.
Yeah, that's the amazing thing. So I think Magnus could beat me with 1 minute to 60 because his intuition is so strong that he doesn't need to spend the energy looking at all the moves that I'm going to look at.
Exactly, exactly. That's a great point. That's a great point to show the stronger players are just seeing less so that they're a lot more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And now this going to the toilet thing reminds me of a game that I had, way back in 2018 with a German man. So we were playing 90 plus 30 chess, and by move 40 you get a 30-minute increment, a 30-minute add-on. And he was down to his last few seconds by move 36 or whatever. He was living off the increment. I still had an hour. And I wanted to put the pressure on him by picking up the speed. But I realized it was a big mistake because by move 40, he just rushed off to the toilet. Whereas I could have just sat on my hands for 1 hour and made him hold it in. And maybe he'll just resign from that.
Oh, that's
So
hilarious.
yeah, so now I would advise my students, if you want to pull off this trick, you have to read your opponent's body language at move 39 if you have the time advantage. Does he need to go to the toilet? Maybe, and then you'll just sit on it for a few minutes.
That is hilarious. That's a great story. That reminds me of a game I was playing, and Matt and I had just gone through this line in our Carocon course, and I got that exact line over the board, and it's a really tricky line for white, and I was playing black. And there's really like only one move that really saves the position. And so I made my move. I'm gonna win a pawn, and I go to the bathroom, and I come back, and I'm just like sitting, and my opponent is thinking, and I look at the clock, and my clock is running. So I made my move, totally forgot to hit the clock, went to the bathroom, came back, and I burned like 8 minutes of my own clock versus 8 minutes of my opponent's clock, and I would have been up on the clock like half an hour, but instead, like with the flip, it was only up on the clock for like 15 minutes. So my biggest blunder that whole game was not hitting the clock.
Oh, yes. No, but at least you got to play on. There was
Yeah.
an incident 2018 Bangkok where Nigel Short played against Gukesh. He was absolutely crushing Gukesh, but forgot to hit the clock. And Gukesh was just seated there. I was there. He was seated so quietly, just looking around. And then as soon as the clock hit zero, then he just started like jumping and celebrating a little bit. And Nigel Shaw was a little bit upset. He wrote a bit something on Facebook or whatever.
And I
Yeah,
think there are strategies to not getting your opponent to notice. Like, don't look at the clock, right? They don't hit the clock. Don't
Yeah,
look over there. Don't make any
yeah,
quick
yeah,
movements. Just be very slow. Act like nothing's wrong. You got to have a good poker
yeah.
face.
Exactly, exactly. If you
D
don't act like
Dave's.
something's wrong, your opponent's antenna will not be up on that.
Yes. Instead of tactics antenna, it's a clock blunder antenna.
Yeah.
All right, well, I think that's all I had on the questions list. If there's any other questions, get them in now before we got to take off. Um, yeah, anything else you guys wanted to talk about?
I have a question. Azel, I've been reading this fantastic book, Perpetual Chess Improvement by Ben Johnson. He
Uh-huh.
goes through almost all the things that you and I like to talk about in terms of study plans. And he references people that he's interviewed on the podcast. In some of the chapters, he has very firm advice. Like, yes, you should definitely play games, definitely play over 1/3 of the time games he mentions in the book. You should have a way you analyze your games, blah, blah, blah. One of the areas that he's not concrete on, and when I was reading this, I thought of you right away because I just finished this book and we had just been talking about this podcast. comparing tactics and calculation. So he thinks of it as like system 1 and 2, right? One's kind of
Yeah.
intuition and one's actively using your brain to work through variations.
Yeah.
One thing that I wonder is, say you're a 1000 rated player. How should you
Hmm.
balance your time between tactics and calculation versus, let's say, you're a 2000 rated player? Do you find a difference there? Because I sometimes think, if you're a real pure beginner, you don't need to calculate too deeply, but I'm curious to hear what you think.
I say that spend most of your time playing. So again, that's not specific to any particular segment of chess. And then whatever your mistake is, just work on that. So if you made a mistake in the opening, then work on openings. If you made a mistake on the end game, work on end games. So there isn't so much like work more on calculation or less, depending on your rating. It depends on why you are losing most of your games. And for you to do this, I'm going to add something to Matt's levels of analysis thing. And that is you want to pick off the lowest hanging fruits of your analysis. And low hanging fruits have two characteristics. The first is that it greatly changes the result of the game. So if you had a tactic that wins you a queen and a tactic that wins you a pawn, the one that wins you the queen is the lower hanging fruit. Because seeing it would have most likely made you win. And the second characteristic of it is that the explanation of the best move should be simple for you. So if it's a 7 move combination and you find it way too tough, then you can leave it aside. It's not a low hanging fruit. But if there's a simple 2 sentence explanation on why another move could have been great, then that's a low hanging fruit for you to pick up. And then once you collect all these low hanging fruits, that informs you on what to train on. Is it calculation? Is it deep calculation or intuition and so on? So I don't have advice. I don't have rating specific advice on what to study.
That makes sense. Yeah, more specific to yourself as a player. I like that advice. Yeah, what do you need to work on? That should guide you.
Mhm.
Another question for you. Are you considering making a more advanced calculation class next? For example, laying strategic ideas on top of the focus of tactical motifs.
Not quite. The reason is that the title of my course quite literally promises a complete guide to calculation. So if I have more things, I will give free updates in that course, Calculation, a complete guide for tournament players.
All right, that is it for episode 9. Thank you all for joining us. Make sure to check out Azel's new course on Chessable, Introduction to Chess Calculation. He also has another one, or his other course, Calculation, a complete guide for tournament players. Thanks for joining us. Thank you for being the first inaugural guest on the podcast. We hope to have you back someday. Thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Jesse.